Okay, we're going to kick off with the first half review of 2017. So I'm going to go for the first half and then we're going to go through a few predictions of what we think is going to happen in the second half of the year. Quick overview of economic highlights. Most of this you will know. CPI, so target for the year, 4%. Currently tracking at 4.5% for the first half of the year. International tourists, this is the big number. This is where we're getting lots and lots of interest at the moment. International tourists, so the target for the year, 11.5 million tourists coming in for the year. Already for the first half of this year, we've seen 6.2 million visitors into Vietnam. That's up 30% on the year. Credit growth target for the year, 18%. We're currently tracking quite some way below that at 6.5% so far for the first half. And GDP, this is the one that's really struggling and is causing a little bit of concern, I would say. So the target for the year, 6.7%. Currently tracking estimated for the first half at 5.6%. I think we're really going to struggle to get anywhere close to 6.7% for the year. Government really trying to push this as high as possible. They're even talking about increasing oil production, but as you've probably seen in the last couple of weeks, the price of oil now has gone down to $44 a barrel. So even increasing oil production is not really going to get to that sort of figure. FDI, again, very positive news for Vietnam. FDI for the year so far, so newly registered capital, this is probably the figure that you should pay more attention to the actual total FDI. So total FDI 19.2 billion and newly registered capital 11.8 billion coming into Vietnam, way surpassing what we saw last year. So Vietnam very much on the spotlight from a regional and global point of view. Lots of foreign investors want to get into the market. Top sectors, manufacturing definitely dominating the market by quite some considerable way, but we're also seeing a lot of investment now going into power and the mining sectors, retail, wholesale, and real estate's actually dropped down. It was number 3 the first part of the year, and it's now dropped down to number 5 in the rankings. Top countries, quite surprisingly, Japan has now come back into number 1 spot, taking over from South Korea. But generally the same 5 groups that we've seen for quite some considerable time. Singapore, China, Taiwan taking the other 5 places. Large FDI projects, it's all about the manufacturing sector. So Samsung in particular, no big surprise, another 2.5 billion going into their Bắc Ninh province plant, and then a number of other major investments in the FDI sector. So oil and gas, this one is a big foreign investment from the Japanese group, which is why we're seeing the Japanese taking that number 1 spot. Some of the key highlights of the first half of the year, I think no big surprise, Mr. Trump has been dominating the headlines throughout the world, and it's also sort of come home to Vietnam as well. So one of the first things that our friend did was to announce that he would no longer be part of the TPP negotiations, which I think is unfortunate. I think it would have been very beneficial to Vietnam, but without that, we've now got the Japanese maybe leading the way in terms of renewing those negotiations with the TPP. So we'll see how that plays out. Other big news for the first half of the year, the JLL Momentum Index now indicates that Ho Chi Minh is now ranked number 2 city in the world from our Momentum Index. This is cities that are just gathering pace and are doing all the right things in terms of infrastructure, in terms of the viability and the vibrancy of a city. And Hanoi, surprisingly, is number 8 on a global basis. Number 1 in the world is Bangalore, so that's what puts it into context. Other top news for the first half of this year, the Wyatt index, the stock market index, up to 770 points this week. We haven't seen that since I think January 2008. So we're now looking at sort of almost 10-year highs for the Vietnam index. Very, very strong performance on the stock market. Maybe slightly disappointing news on the stock market. It didn't get that transfer from a frontier status into the emerging market status, which would have opened the market up a lot more. But I'm sure that will come over the next year or two. M&A activity, big. Casino laws have been relaxed, so we're now going to start to see, it's still a little bit grey, but the casino laws, we're going to start to see Vietnamese allowed to gamble, which would be pretty interesting times. And from a construction ministry point of view, we had a new decree that came out to allow developers to construct smaller size apartments from 45 square metres down to 25 square metres. The continued visa exemption program has been well received, and that's got the green light to continue for another until 30th of June 2018, which is really driving this international tourism. Moving on to the apartment market. So for this year, first half of this year, 16,000 units launched in the first half of this year. This is high-rise modern apartments. So slightly down on last year, still a big number, but 14% down on last year. A lot of new launches happening. You see the total number for 2016, about 35,000 units launched in 2016. Moving on to units sold. So units sold for first half of the year, 17,000 units sold in this first half of 2017. That's up 15% on the year. Big numbers for units sold. So this market activity, the market continues to really drive. It's all about new launches. Everyone still really is very interested in new launch product. Average selling price. Now we're looking at primary selling price. Averaging, this is across all sectors, so about $1,500 a square metre. What we've done now is we've actually put in a net yield, because I think this is an interesting part of the market, and I'll touch on it later. Net yield, so if you buy an apartment and you lease it out, and then you take off all your management fees and all your other costs, net yield, average net yield, this is for premium sector only, is 5.66%. We expect that yield to compress, we expect that yield to come down because of the amount of supply that's coming through to the market. So completed stock, this is a number that always fascinates me about completed stock. Total completed stock for Ho Chi Minh, 102,000 units. This is modern high-rise apartments. Only 102,000 units. Now, when you compare that to a population, official population of Ho Chi Minh is 8.4 million, unofficial is probably 3 to 4 million plus. So we could be talking about 11 to 12 million people. You put that into context of 100,000 units and it's minuscule. So that's where we see that there is still plenty of, whilst we're seeing a lot of development activity, there's still plenty of room for growth in certain sectors. Just some heat maps in terms of where we're seeing the development activity. The story is all about the east. The city is moving east. So District 2, 7, 9, to District 12. All the development activity that we're currently seeing for modern high-rise apartments, with District 8 as being a slight exception, is all moving to the east. On to villa and townhouse. First half launches. Again, this is a big number. 2,700 villas and townhouses launched in the first half of this year, compared to just 3,000 units for the whole of last year. So we've nearly surpassed the total number of last year. 1,381 units launched in Q2 alone. Units sold, again, huge amount of interest in villas and townhouses at the moment. 2,661 villas and townhouses sold in the first half of this year, up 108% on last year. Again, it's all about the new launches. If there's a new launch, then generally it's attracting very, very strong interest. Average selling price for the villas and townhouses around the 1,800 mark. That's up 5% on the quarter and a massive 15% on last year. So this villa townhouse market, it would appear that the interest of landed properties is very much there. Everyone still wants to buy. If there is an option to buy land property, that is still very much the preferred option if you have finance. Total complete stock, again, a relatively small number, 5,800 units in total for Ho Chi Minh. Again, compared to the population, we still think that's very manageable. All the activity, again, basically focusing on 4 key districts, which is D12, D2, D9, and Nha Bay. So those key districts are seeing all the development activity. There is activity in other districts, but this is where the primary focus is currently happening. Moving on to the office market. I mean, as you all know, the office market is super tight. I mean, there is very little, there is some development, but the actual total amount of stock we're still seeing in the market, 1.8 million square meters. Compare that to other Southeast Asian countries, again, it's a very, very small number. I think we have in Singapore, Regina, I think 5 million square meters, and other Southeast Asian countries, the square meterage is much bigger than we're seeing in Ho Chi Minh. Occupancy rate, I think is pretty well known now. Very, very high occupancy rates on grade A supply, 96%. This is what a big challenge for our leasing team. So any large space users in the market at the moment that are looking to take larger space, there's really 2 options in the market if you're looking for grade A, that's Deutsche House and Saigon Centre Phase 2. Rental rates. This is the interesting slide. You would think because of the occupancy rate being so high, rental rates have got to start pushing up. We haven't really seen it. It's been flatlining for the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, staying at that sort of level. We expect that to start to increase, and we've already seen some of the grade A landlords increasing their quoting rents to higher rates than we've seen for a number of years. Future supply, so the remaining supply for this year, so Deutsche House and Saigon Centre Phase 2 for this year, that brings us, including the grade B, up to 113,000 square meters. And then for next year, another 140,000 square meters. That's accounting for Saigon MBC Tower. Some of the upcoming projects, I'm sure you're all aware of. As mentioned, Deutsche House, Saigon Centre Phase 2 completing this year, E-Town Central in District 4, Saigon 1 Tower, which would be great news for the market. I think that's I think we'd all breathe a big sigh of relief if that starts construction again. We can start to see some activity on that site, and the timing could be very, very good if it completes next year. One Hub Saigon in District 9, new business park by Sendus. And then the Spirit of Saigon by Texaco, Sutrac Complex, and then Capital Land Tower further into 2019 and onwards. So still relatively limited supply. The demand that we see in the market, our leasing teams are sort of overwhelmed with demand from not just from the existing companies, but a lot of new companies now coming to Vietnam. Due to that sort of foreign investment, we're now seeing very strong activity from new companies. Moving on to the retail sector, so total supply, 858,000 square meters, still relatively small. Some of the new brands coming into the market, I think this is the exciting part of the retail market at the moment. We are starting to see some good quality retail, international retail brands coming into the market. Old Navy opened their first store in Vietnam. H&M will be coming soon. This is on the back of Zara, a very, very successful opening of the first Zara store. Uniqlo, touted to be coming to the market. They're now making the right noises to be coming into the market by the end of the year. And Mugosh Eyewear, their first store opened in Ho Chi Minh in Q1 of this year. So we're starting to see more and more international brands entering the market. One of the interesting themes that we're seeing at the market at the moment is all about the convenience store. A real battle starting to heat up for the convenience store market. Vinmart, as you can see there, taking centre stage and way ahead in terms of numbers. 423 stores for Vinmart, Circle K, 240 stores. But the big news of this quarter, actually, the opening of the 7-Eleven store, I think is going to be very interesting. And the queues that we saw, because it opened in our building in Saigon Trade Centre, was phenomenal. The sales that they reported, this is unofficial quote from one of the 7-Eleven team, I'm not sure whether they're here, but this broke global records. The opening of this store, the revenue that they took within the first few days, broke global records, which is unbelievable. Occupancy rate, so non-CBD is the top one at 93%, and CBD is actually down to 87%. That's really due to, I think, the repositioning of Union Square. So we see quite a high occupancy because of the repositioning and reconfiguration of Union Square in CBD. Average rates, CBD about $73 and non-CBD $37. New supply coming through for the next 2 to 3 years. So Garden Mall, Pearl Centre, which is touting Pearl. It's just the repositioning. They're finally sort of getting their act together and getting that to open officially. And then Vincom Central Park and Estella Place. Quick view of the industrial market. So overall industrial market, this is for the southern region. Total hectares is about 38,000 hectares in total. That's total industrial land. And then leasable land is about 25,000 hectares. The major provinces, as you'll know, Binh and Dong Nai, dominating sort of the industrial market at the moment. Net rents, from land perspective, about $71 is on average across the board, and for if you went to go and lease a factory, about $2 to $5 per square metre. Occupancy rates, on average, across the board, about 75% occupancy rate. The highest being in Binh at 84% occupancy. Future supply, this is for until 2020, so a lot of new supply coming through to the market on the industrial side, up to 14,000 hectares in the southern region. But this is, the demand is all of the FDI, the amount of Vietnam becoming a manufacturing hub for Southeast Asia, and a lot of companies now looking at Vietnam as an alternative to China. This is, I think, a positive sign, and we're going to see this trend continue. A little bit on M&A activity in the first half of the year. So, a few deals closed or are in the process of closing. So, Saigon One Tower, again, I think great news congratulations to Alpha King for managing to close that deal. I think this is great news, not just as a transaction, but very, very good news for the city. This needs to happen. I think it tidies up the city. We don't want to see empty buildings, half-constructed buildings. So I think we can hopefully see some construction activity starting fairly soon. Two team, the CII and the announcement of the Hong Kong land deal in Two Team. Everidge, 3 exchanged hands to an undisclosed buyer, and Daifuc Lotus, the Vinaland fund, traded the Dyford Lotus to China Fortune Land. So, quick outlook of what we think is going to happen for 2017. As we mentioned, relatively limited on the office. 2 new Grade A buildings coming to the market, 130,000 square metres. We expect to start to see that average rent creep up quarter by quarter because of that limited supply, and the demand now is so strong, so rents have to start increasing. Good news for landlords, not great news for tenants. Retail outlook, 103,000 square metres of retail new supply coming through by the end of the year. What we're seeing is a lot of development activity around, not so much in the CBD now, it's all about in the surrounding districts, and a lot of those international retailers coming into the market. Residential outlook, so new launches for the remainder of this year, 25 to 27,000 new units being launched by the end of this year. That's going to take us up to a sort of a record high, so 35,000 units launched last year. This year we'll get up to over 40,000 units being launched. On the villa townhouses, 1,500 units launched by the end of the year. Again, we're going to see up to about 4,000 units launched for the year. That will way surpass the units that we saw last year. I think from a residential point of view, we see the main priority or the main focus is all about the mid-end of the market, affordable and mid-end of the market. Industrial outlook, fairly, again, because that FDI, a lot of new businesses coming into the market, that new supply coming through. Rental rates on general are fairly stable, and the growth of the new build or the ready-to-build factories, we expect that to continue. In the logistics sector, I think in particular, we've started to see a number of investors, a number of groups very interested in logistics and starting to develop logistics. Large-scale projects, I think some of these projects have been on hold for some considerable years. I think it's a great sign of where we are in the market today, is that these projects have now been reinvigorated and restarted. So Cycle 1 has been mentioned. Kenton Node has been on hold for a number of years, but they've now got the backing and the funding to restart again. And my Vietnamese Tuan Kien Plaza has finally got restarting again. So great sign for the market. I think we're now seeing that real activity for all of these older projects to kickstart. So a little bit of my three last predictions of what we're going to see for the remainder of this year, all about foreign investors. We're seeing so many foreign investors come to us at the moment. We're definitely going to see more Chinese investors. We think in the market we're seeing a number of Chinese groups now on a regular basis, and some of the big Chinese groups are now looking at Vietnam. One thing to watch in our view, the banking sector. The market is all about the banking sector. We expect to see a little bit of a slowdown on the banking sector for the remainder of this year. Credit, the growth for lending to real estate in particular is quite a hot topic from a fairly high level. So the banking sector we expect to see a little bit of consolidation and maybe a slowdown in terms of growth. We still need to take into account the non-performing loans from the last cycle, which got transferred into the VAMC, which is circa 15 billion, depending on who you speak to. That still needs to be taken into account. And the government at some point is going to have to take an action. The State Bank of Vietnam will have to take action. So the banking sector, we believe, is going to be one of the key sort of industries to watch for the next 6 months. Rental yield, as I touched on earlier, from a residential point of view, if you're an investor in the market, pick your projects and pick your developers carefully. Make sure that from a rental, if you're looking to lease out your property, do your homework, make sure you've done your market research, because the rental yields are going to compress in certain projects. With the amount of supply coming through, we're going to have to see some rental compression. So rents and yield are going to go down. last but not least, I'll leave you with my friend. So big event at the end of this, November of this year, so the APAC conference in Da Nang, which is going to be put, Vietnam's already on the map. It's a very big event for Vietnam, and our friend is going to be here as well, so it should be very exciting.